courtroom lights hummed with that old fluorescent buzz, cheap, institutional, and different. A white police officer sat tall at the witness stand, badge still pinned, shirt pressed, nameplate glinting under the lights. Across the room, an elderly black man sat alone at the defendant's table. His coat was worn, the seams frayed, one button missing near the collar. He hadn't spoken much all day. Most in the room had already made up their minds. They saw a story they'd seen before. He reached into his pocket. Officer Martinez said, voice steady, fast, like he was pulling something. He paused for effect. I feared for my life. No gasps, no reactions, just pens moving across paper, quietly affirming what everyone already expected. The judge leaned back slightly. Anything to say before sentencing? The old man raised his eyes. Come. Yes, he said. I'd like to make one phone call. The courtroom shifted, subtly. A few chuckles. The judge smirked. Sir, this isn't the time for theatrics. But the old man was already pulling a small, worn card from his inner coat pocket. He placed it face down on the table and dialed. 6 digits. A pause. Then a phrase, spoken evenly. This is Blackstar 672. Clearance echo. Patch me to command. There was silence. Even Martinez looked up. A courtroom aide, young, quiet, seated in the back, blinked twice at the card. She stood, left the room without a word. Exactly 27 minutes later, the door opened. 3 people walked in. No uniforms. No introductions. They approached the judge, handed over a folder, and the room went still. Not every story needs a headline. Some just need to be remembered. If you've ever seen someone be misjudged and felt it in your gut, leave a quiet word in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Someone else might need to hear it. He walked the same route every morning. 6:04 a.m. Exactly. His front door clicked shut behind him, and the chill of early air wrapped around his coat. Black wool, thick and worn. The same coat every day. It didn't draw attention anymore. It had become part of the landscape, like the cracked sidewalk or the leaning mailbox on 5th and Union. To most people in the neighborhood, he was just the old man in the black coat. No one knew his name. No one ever asked. He didn't speak much, didn't loiter, didn't smile, but didn't scowl either. He nodded, always a simple, dignified nod, to the mailman, to the woman opening her flower shop, to the man sweeping outside the barber shop with the rusting sign. He bought his coffee from a small window tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. Cash only. Black, no sugar. He'd drink it on the bench facing the street, flipping slowly through a folded newspaper, not a phone, not a tablet. A real, crinkled paper. His fingers turned the pages like they remembered something long before touchscreen swipes. Kids walked by on their way to school. Some would glance at him, curious. Some crossed the street. He never minded either way. He just read. Sometimes he'd watch people longer than most would be comfortable with. Not in a threatening way, just present. Fully. Like he saw things others didn't. By 6:53, he was back home. Quiet as he left. The rest of his day was spent behind drawn curtains. No visitors. No packages. Nothing remarkable. Except maybe the consistency. Officer Martinez's shift started around 7 o'clock. He didn't notice the old man at first. Didn't have reason to. His job covered 3 blocks in each direction, mostly routine. Checking expired plates, loitering reports, the occasional domestic call. But the neighborhood had changed. There had been break-ins recently. Property damage. A fire that hadn't been declared arson, but everyone whispered it. A general unease had settled in. The kind that gives police like Martinez a reason to patrol, just a little more visibly. He was young enough to be ambitious, old enough to think he knew the city. In uniform, in his cruiser, he sat a little taller, eyes sharp, voice just loud enough to assert authority without having to shout. He noticed people noticed him. They moved quicker when he walked past, said sir more than needed, and that was fine with him. Respect meant safety. Respect meant order, but not the old man. Martinez first really noticed him when their paths crossed near the coffee window. The The man had stepped aside to let someone pass, and as Martinez approached, he gave the same quiet nod he gave to everyone. Martinez didn't return it, didn't speak, but something in the man's gaze caught him. Not defiant, not submissive, just steady, too steady. Over time, Martinez began to look for him. He told himself it was about patterns, patrol instinct. You notice people who move differently, and the old man moved differently, not suspiciously, but purposefully, like someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. That unsettled Martinez more than he wanted to admit. He ran the man's face through the system once, quietly. No hits, no ID, not even a flag plate, just blank. He made a note of it, mentally. Started keeping mental notes of other things, too. How the man always took the same seat at the bench. How he never used his phone in public. How he always glanced over his shoulder twice before crossing any street. Not nervously, but tactically. It annoyed him. Not because the man had done anything wrong, but because he made Martinez feel unacknowledged. Unnecessary. That was the thing. Martinez was used to being noticed. He'd been commended twice for his community presence. He'd stopped a robbery once. Textbook maneuver, textbook takedown. People clapped. The neighborhood waved at him when he passed. But not this man. This man simply existed beside him, like wind passing through a screen. There, not there. A few of Martinez's co-workers joked about the guy. Maybe he's a ghost. Maybe he's CIA. Maybe he's just a grumpy old fart. But Martinez didn't laugh, because a small part of him, a part he never said out loud, wondered if maybe that middle one wasn't a joke. It didn't make sense, but neither did the man's silence. And silence, Martinez had learned, always meant something. He just didn't know what. Not yet. The morning it happened, the air felt different. Not dramatically so, not stormy or dark, just colder than expected. The kind of cold that seeps under collars and makes you walk faster, even when you have nowhere in particular to be. The old man adjusted his coat with one gloved hand as he stepped out from the corner store. The bag in his other hand held a single banana, a folded newspaper, and a black coffee in a cup that steamed against the chill. His gait was the same as always, measured, unhurried. He paused once outside the door, squinted up at the sky as if reading the clouds, then turned to walk east along the sidewalk. His right hand slipped into the deep pocket of his coat, as it always did when temperatures dropped. Across the street, Officer Martinez was behind the wheel of his patrol car. He hadn't slept well the night before. His back was stiff. There had been a noise complaint turned ugly the previous evening, and internal review had been pushing paperwork deadlines on a previous stop that hadn't gone cleanly. He was agitated, quietly, the kind of agitation that doesn't show up as yelling, but has eyes that move too fast and hands that hover near the belt buckle a second too long. He didn't see the old man at first, not consciously. His brain noticed before he did. A shape, a rhythm out of place. Then the recognition clicked. Black coat, same time, same street, but something looked different this time. Was it the hand in the pocket, the slight turn of a shoulder, or just the fact that Martinez was on edge and looking for a place to land that tension? Either way, he pulled to the curb, harder than necessary. The tires kissed the gutter with a thud. He rolled down the window. Hey, the old man didn't turn. Martinez watched him walk. He raised his voice. Sir, I'm talking to you. Still no response. Just a few more steps. Deliberate. Hand still in the coat pocket. And something in Martinez snapped. Later, in the report, he would write, subject appeared to ignore verbal commands. Suspected weapon concealment based on posture and refusal to comply. Officer feared for potential threat to public safety. In real time, what happened was simpler. Martinez threw the car into park, flung open the door, and called out one more time, louder now. Hands where I can see them. The old man stopped. He turned his head, just slightly, not quite fully, as if registering that someone behind him was speaking, not with surprise, but mild reluctance. He said nothing, and in that pause, that space between turning and speaking, Martinez was already moving, His boots hit the pavement hard, right hand on the taser holster, then shifting reflexively to the firearm. But he didn't draw. Not yet. He closed the distance in 5 long strides. "Let me see your hands." The old man turned slowly, his face calm. No anger, no confusion, just a steady, unreadable gaze. His hand stayed in his pocket. Martinez's voice cracked. "I said hands up now." And then a blur. Martinez grabbed the front of the man's coat with both hands, spun him around, and shoved him face first into the brick wall beside the pawn shop window. The coffee cup dropped, shattering against the ground, dark liquid blooming across the concrete like a bruise. A gasp came from somewhere. A woman waiting at the crosswalk. A man sitting outside the barbershop. No one moved. Martinez pressed his knee into the back of the man's legs, forcing him down. The old man didn't resist, didn't speak. His hand was yanked from his pocket by Martinez's glove, empty. Nothing inside. No weapon. No phone. Still, he was shoved to the ground. One arm twisted behind his back, zip ties secured, and in the sudden silence that followed, you could hear the sound of his paper, crumpled now, fluttering slightly in the wind. Martinez breathed heavily, looked around. Nobody was filming. A couple people were watching, but nobody moved. He said loudly. He was reaching. I gave multiple commands. He ignored all of them. His voice was too loud for the quiet morning, and the man on the ground said nothing. He didn't look scared or angry, just tired. The wind picked up slightly as Martinez tightened the zip ties, double-checking them with unnecessary force. The old man's cheek rested against the cold sidewalk. A small patch of blood had bloomed where the concrete had split the skin near his eyebrow. Not enough to alarm, but enough to stain. Still, he didn't speak, didn't demand anything, didn't ask why. He just looked at nothing, at a leaf in the gutter, at the crushed coffee cup, at the sky, barely blue behind the haze. Martinez exhaled and pressed the radio at his shoulder. Unit 47 requesting backup and transport. Possible weapons suspicion. Suspect non-compliant. A pause. Then, copy that. Unit 12 en route. He stood over the man, trying not to show his own shaking hands. Something about the silence unnerved him. Usually there was yelling, protest, swearing, pleading. But this man, this quiet, strange old man was still. Not defeated, not broken, just still. A few pedestrians passed. One woman slowed, watching. Her phone was halfway out of her purse before she noticed Martinez's eyes on her. She hesitated, then tucked it away and kept walking. Another man stepped out from the barbershop. He looked older, Caribbean maybe, with salt and pepper hair and a cane. He didn't say anything either, just shook his head slowly and stepped back inside. Martinez felt the weight of their glances, but pushed it down. Procedure, he muttered to himself, as if saying it made it clean. When the transport unit arrived, Martinez opened the back door himself. He didn't bother reading the man his rights. That could wait at the station. He hoisted him up, not gently, not cruelly, just efficiently. The man didn't resist, didn't even flinch. He sat in the back of the cruiser, hands bound, head tilted back slightly, as if to watch the sky through the bars on the window. Martinez sat in the front. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't speak. The silence stretched for several blocks. Halfway there, Martinez looked into the rearview mirror. The man was staring straight ahead. Not at him, not out the window, just forward, eyes steady. Martinez looked away first. At the station, the intake officer asked, "Weapon recovered?" Martinez shook his head. No. Reached like he had one. Didn't follow orders. Had to respond. Any witnesses? Martinez hesitated. Not reliable ones. Paperwork began. Boxes checked. Forms filled. Process moving. But in the small, temporary holding cell where the man was placed, he sat the same way he had on the street. Upright. Quiet. Watching. As if waiting. For what? No one could tell. But something about that stillness unsettled even the night shift. Hours passed in the station. The man was processed, fingerprinted, photographed. His coat was taken, folded into a clear plastic bag, and tagged with a number he never looked at. When they asked for his name, he answered quietly, just a first name, just once. He didn't repeat it. They misspelled it on the form. He didn't correct them. The intake officer flagged the incident as non-critical. No weapon recovered, no resisting arrest, no injury requiring hospital transport. Still, the report was filed. The box checked. Subject appeared potentially armed, refused verbal orders. That was all it took. Just that phrasing, and the machine moved forward. Martinez didn't go home. He stayed in the station, pretending to finish paperwork, but his eyes kept glancing toward the holding hallway. He told himself it was follow-through. Chain of custody, officer diligence. But the truth was simpler. He wanted to know why the man wasn't angry, wasn't asking for a phone call, wasn't yelling about civil rights, or police brutality, or racism. Just waiting. That waiting got under Martinez's skin more than any protest would have. People were supposed to react. That made them predictable. But this man had given him nothing. No fear, no submission, no resistance, not even eye contact. Just stillness, like a calculation still running in the background. By late afternoon, the schedule had caught up. A judge had been assigned. The station's public defender rotation had kicked in. A hearing was slotted for the next morning. Just a formality, someone said. Probably pleaded down, trespass or obstruction. Worst case, time served. It'll clear. No one asked if the arrest was justified. No one looked deeper than the ink on the form, because the form said all it needed to say, and because the man said nothing to contradict it. Martinez walked past the holding cell one more time before heading home. The old man sat exactly as before, back straight, hands on knees, eyes open. Martinez stopped, stared. Why didn't you take your hand out when I told you to? His voice was low, not angry, but not casual either. The man didn't answer, didn't blink. Martinez leaned a little closer. I could have shot you. Still nothing. Then, after a long silence, just long enough that Martinez thought maybe he'd imagined it, the old man spoke. Calm, dry, almost inaudible. You didn't have clearance. Then he closed his eyes, and the room felt colder than before. The courtroom was small, not the kind you see on television. No polished oak panels, no gavel thunder. Just a cramped municipal room, with flickering lights, scuffed linoleum, and a seal on the wall that hadn't been updated in 30 years. There were 6 people seated inside, not counting security. The judge, the public defender, a clerk, 2 city prosecutors, and a translator, a young woman, barely out of college, seated behind the defendant's chair with a headset she didn't need that day. The old man didn't request translation. He didn't request anything. He was let in without cuffs. That detail alone gave the room an odd feel. Someone had removed them quietly before the session began, citing lack of current threat. He walked slowly, carefully, like someone used to measuring the distance of every step. His shoes made no sound. He didn't wear the coat. It had been taken in as evidence. He wore a plain black shirt, tucked, his posture perfect, as if the bench were a podium. The clerk mispronounced his name. Again, he didn't correct her. The judge called the session to order, read the docket without emotion, glanced up at the man only once, and then down again. The arrest report sat in front of him, but it was thin, barely 3 pages. He frowned, flipping through it twice, like something was missing. Mr. The judge paused, hesitated at the name. Do you understand the charges being brought against you? The man nodded. I do. His voice was quiet, balanced. No fear, no sarcasm, no tremble. The public defender leaned in slightly, unsure if she was supposed to speak. The man gave no indication he needed her. I see here, the judge continued. Failure to comply with lawful order, suspicion of concealed weapon, no weapon found, however. He trailed off, then looked back up. Do you have anything you wish to say before we proceed? The man blinked once, then said without drama, "Yes, I'd like to place a call." The judge raised an eyebrow. "This is not an arraignment. This is a pretrial confirmation. There's no..." The man reached into the folder they'd allowed him to keep, pulled out a black card. Matte finish. No logo. He didn't hand it to anyone. Just placed it face down on the table in front of him. The back was marked only by a string of numbers, white embossed. Then, gently, he lifted the courtroom phone receiver, an old plastic landline on the table. No one stopped him. He dialed 7 numbers, waited, then said calmly, "This is Blackstar 672. Clearance Echo. Patch me to command." The room didn't move, but something shifted. The clerk looked up. The judge blinked. The translator stared. She was seated just behind him, close enough to see the back of the card as he placed it down. Her eyes locked on those numbers. Something in her training, some briefing from some internship or lecture or clearance she shouldn't have had clicked. She stood, didn't ask, didn't excuse herself, just walked out. 27 minutes passed. The room tried to return to normal. The judge cleared his throat, flipped the pages again. "Well," he said to the public defender, "in the absence of further information or request for counsel, I suppose we can proceed to..." He stopped. The door opened. 3 people walked in. 2 men, 1 woman, all in plain clothes, neutral tones. Their IDs were not visible, but no one asked for them. They didn't greet anyone. They didn't look at the old man. They didn't sit. One of them approached the bench, said nothing, just handed over a sealed envelope. The judge took it, looked confused, then opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Nothing else. He read it. Once, then again. Then his face went blank, pale. He looked up, not the old man, but at the people who had brought the paper. One of them nodded slowly. No words were spoken. The judge cleared his throat, closed the file in front of him. "This matter," he said, voice suddenly thin, "will be deferred, pending federal review." No one moved. The court clerk reached for her pen, but froze. The 2 prosecutors whispered to each other. And the old man, he simply stood, not waiting for permission, not needing to be told. He picked up the card, slipped it back into the folder, walked down the aisle between the pews of chairs, and as he passed the 3 visitors, the woman among them stepped back, just slightly, to let him through. It was not a gesture of politeness. It was protocol. He left the room, and no one followed. Not yet. Her name was Marisol, 23, fluent in Spanish, Vietnamese, and partial Farsi. On contract through a municipal language program. Low pay, long hours, rotating assignments. She was used to being invisible. That's what made her good. She knew how to sit still, how to listen without reacting, how to watch the rhythm of people's speech and catch the moment before meaning slipped through. But after that day, after that man, something in her began to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a slight tremble, deep inside her sense of safety. It started with the card. She hadn't meant to look, but she had been seated just behind him. When he placed it down, face down, she caught the edge of it. The white numbers against the black matte finish. Clean, raised. She couldn't explain how she knew, but she did. It was real. Not like the ones people carry to bluff. Not like old military IDs or novelty agency cards. This one had weight. Clearance Echo. She remembered that part. She remembered, too, how no one else in the room seemed to catch the shift. How the judge kept speaking. The prosecutor kept reading, as if the ground hadn't just moved beneath them. And she remembered leaving, walking out without permission, because something in her body had already made the decision before her mind caught up. She didn't go back in. She waited in the hallway. And when the 3 arrived, 30 minutes later, no sirens, no announcement, she watched them walk past without a glance. Their faces unreadable, their pace unhurried. She stepped aside instinctively, not out of fear, out of recognition. She didn't go back to work that day. By the end of the week, Marisol had filed a formal request to transfer her out of courtroom assignments. No one questioned her. Language services was understaffed. People moved all the time. She took desk work, translation reviews, remote interpreting for medical appointments, anything that kept her out of rooms like that one. She didn't tell anyone why, but she started sleeping with the lights on again, not because she was scared of what would happen, but because she was beginning to see how much had already happened and how little people noticed. Elsewhere, a junior prosecutor named Devin Tran sat alone in a break room, scrolling. He had been in the courtroom that day, second chair, brought in for coverage. He remembered the old man's face, the calmness, the stillness. But what haunted him wasn't the man. It was the silence after the envelope was opened. Devin had spent his entire short career believing in procedure, believing that if he followed rules, filled out forms, stayed neutral, then truth would do its job. But that day he saw something else. He saw truth walk into a room and say nothing, and still cause the air to drop 10 degrees. Late that night, he ran a check on the defendant's file. Nothing came up. Not nothing like a redacted file. Nothing like nothing. No birth certificate. No property record. No prior arrest. No social security match. The system said not found. He tried again. Adjusted for spelling. Checked aliases. Cross-referenced with known risk profiles. Still nothing. Then, 15 minutes later, his system access froze. Logged out automatically. When he logged back in, the query log was gone. Not just cleared, deleted. The next morning, his supervisor forwarded an IT maintenance update with a reminder about data boundaries. Devin didn't reply. He closed his laptop, went to the bathroom, and vomited, not out of guilt, but out of the creeping realization that there were rooms he'd never be allowed to enter, and he'd just seen the door to one of them open and close without ever being invited inside. Neither Marisol nor Devin ever spoke about the man again, but from that day on, they carried him like a shadow. She began declining criminal case assignments altogether. He began asking more questions in the cases no one wanted to touch. Neither defended him, neither needed to. They just stopped playing along. And in stories like this, sometimes that's the loudest thing anyone can do. Martinez returned to duty the next morning like nothing had happened. He showed up early, in uniform, badge polished, logged in, checked his vehicle assignment, ran the morning reports. The station smelled of stale coffee and overused carpet cleaner, the same way it always did. But something was off. His name wasn't on the usual route list. His cruiser had been reassigned. Instead, he was given desk duty. No explanation. He asked the admin, a woman named Rachel, what happened. She shrugged, said it came from upstairs. Something about rotation. He nodded, but it wasn't rotation. He knew rotation. This was different. Over the next few days, the differences multiplied. His requests for clearance on routine patrol reports took longer to process. Emails weren't returned. His lieutenant, usually talkative, stopped making eye contact. A training seminar he had been scheduled to lead was quietly canceled. His name replaced by someone newer, less experienced. And the biggest shift, nobody talked to him unless they had to. Not with hostility, not with open accusation, just absence, an intentional kind of silence. At first, he thought it was just coincidence. Then he tried to call internal affairs about a pending complaint he wanted expunged, something from 2 years back that had always been marked closed with no further action. But the system said the file was under review. He tried to log in again later. Access denied. He started asking questions, casually, to people he trusted. Hey, did you hear anything about my patrol change? No one had. Do you know if the Taylor file's been reopened? People changed the subject. He even tried to laugh it off. Maybe someone upstairs thinks I need a vacation. But no one laughed with him. On Thursday, he sat in the break room. The TV was on low volume. A local news anchor mentioned an internal federal investigation in a municipal court, but no names were given. No footage. Just a blip. He looked around the room. 2 officers were watching, quietly. They didn't look at him. By Friday, Martinez began to feel it in his bones. The weight of being watched, not from in front, but from behind. The way people make space around someone they're no longer sure how to stand beside. He wasn't suspended. He wasn't disciplined. But he was no longer invited into any room where decisions were being made. He went to the locker room late that night, long after his shift ended. The building was nearly empty. He sat on the bench, staring at his own name on the locker, a label he'd stuck there with pride 6 years ago. For a moment, he thought about peeling it off, but he didn't. Instead, he opened the locker, grabbed his duffel bag, and pulled out the same report he'd written after the arrest. He read it again. The phrasing felt different now. Subject appeared to ignore verbal command. Feared for safety due to concealed posture. Subject did not comply. He'd written those same phrases 100 times, but this time, they looked like someone else had written them. Like a story told by someone trying not to admit they didn't know what they were seeing. He folded the report, put it back in the duffel, closed the locker. Outside, the night was cold again. The sky was clear, and for the first time in years, Martinez didn't know who might be watching him from the dark. The Monday after the courtroom incident, the old man walked out his door at exactly 6:04 a.m. As always. Same coat, same silence, but he didn't turn left. For the first time in a decade, he turned right. The difference was subtle. Most wouldn't notice, but for the 3 shopkeepers who usually saw him pass by, something felt wrong in the rhythm of the morning. The bench stayed empty. The coffee window didn't steam open on time. The owner paused, looking out, as if he'd forgotten how to begin without the silent nod from the man who always arrived first. The newspaper vendor, used to folding a copy just the way he liked it, kept one set aside, then threw it away when no one claimed it. And the pigeons who usually gathered near his bench scattered too early, confused by the stillness. The old man walked in the opposite direction now. A longer route, fewer people, less light. He didn't walk slower or faster, just different. He didn't stop for coffee, didn't carry a paper, didn't acknowledge the man watering his flowers on Fifth, who always said, "Morning, boss." He just walked, eyes straight ahead, hands in his coat, one inside, one out. At the corner, a young woman tripped on the uneven sidewalk. He saw it. She looked up, startled, expecting help. He kept walking, not unkindly, not with malice, but with the air of someone who no longer owed the world a performance. At the corner bodega, the owner, who used to save a banana for him each morning, watched through the window. He didn't stop in, didn't wave, didn't even glance that way. The door beeped once from another customer, but the air felt heavier after the old man passed. For years, he had been a part of the scenery, the kind of man who made others feel more grounded by simply being nearby. People didn't know him, but they relied on his consistency, his quiet, his harmlessness. Now, without a word, he had withdrawn it. He didn't shout. He didn't leave a note. He didn't move away. He simply stopped participating. That was the small decision, to stop letting others define the shape of his silence, to take it back, to let the absence of his former self speak louder than anything he could have said in court. The change rippled. Kids stopped lingering near the bench where he once read the paper. The coffee shop closed 20 minutes earlier now. Even the barber shop left its gate half shut until 7:30, instead of opening with the sunrise. No one said it was because of him. No one admitted it. But absence has a way of proving value louder than presence ever could. And somewhere on a second-floor apartment balcony, Martinez sat watching the street, eyes fixed on the empty corner where the man no longer stood, wondering for the first time if he'd actually lost something he never understood to begin with. It started with a glance. A patrol meeting on Wednesday morning. Martinez raised his hand to ask a question about shift rotations. The sergeant didn't acknowledge it, just moved on. A small thing. Could have been accidental, but it wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Later that day, he was patrolling near the park. A group of teenagers sat along the brick wall, playing music from a speaker, not particularly loud, but not subtle either. A month ago, Martinez might have stopped, asked them to turn it down, maybe check for truancy. This time he paused, opened his cruiser door, stood. They looked up, waited. He took a step toward them. "Let's keep it moving," he said, voice even. No one moved. He cleared his throat. I said. One of the teens raised an eyebrow. Not aggressive, just curious. Then they all turned back to their phones. Martinez stood for a moment longer, then got back in his car. He didn't report it. The next day, he flagged a man outside a hardware store for unusual behavior. The man had been standing too long, looking around. He called it in, described the behavior. The dispatcher said. Martinez hesitated. He's loitering, keeps looking across the street. A pause on the other end. Any threat observed? No, Martinez said, too quickly. But I've got a feeling. Another pause. We're holding units for higher priority right now. Proceed if necessary. The line clicked. At the station, colleague, someone who used to laugh with him at roll call, passed him in the hallway and didn't nod, didn't even blink. Martinez turned, opened his mouth, then closed it. His weekly case update report came back flagged. Not for errors, just marked incomplete. When he checked the file, nothing had been removed, but the formatting had been rearranged, as if someone had gone in and silently invalidated the logic of his narrative. He emailed the supervisor. No reply. That night, he called a former partner, someone he'd ridden with for years, before promotions split them. Hey, he said casual. You hearing anything weird around the department? The voice on the other end was neutral. Too neutral. Like what? About me. About that guy from court. Silence. Then, no one saying anything. But the tone carried the weight of a sentence unspoken, because they don't have to. He walked into the locker room the next morning to find his name tag missing. Not peeled. Not defaced. Just gone. As if it had never been there. He checked twice. Opened the locker anyway. Everything was still inside, but it felt colder. At roll call, the sergeant handed out assignments. Names were read. Zones distributed. Martinez waited. His name was last. You'll be writing support today, the sergeant said, not looking up. Shadow detail. No zone. No lead. No explanation. Just backseat presence. On patrol, the younger officer he was paired with didn't speak. Didn't ask for advice. Didn't defer. Martinez tried to offer input twice. Both times, the reply came clipped. Noted. That evening, back at the station, someone brought donuts. The box was passed around the room. It skipped him. Not out of malice. Just omission. Martinez sat at his desk after hours, the room nearly empty. He stared at the bulletin board, where names rotated for commendations. His used to be there. Twice. Now the space where his name had been was filled with someone new. Someone fresh out of academy. The lights buzzed overhead. His phone stayed silent. And for the first time in his career, Martinez began to understand. He hadn't been punished. He'd been excluded. And exclusion is quieter than blame, but heavier to carry. The SUV was matte black. No plates. No decals. Just a faint antenna on the roof and windows you couldn't see through. It was parked outside the precinct when Martinez arrived. He slowed down when he saw it, not consciously. Just a flicker in his brain that said, this isn't routine. Inside, the air felt different. The front desk officer, usually chatty, didn't even look up. In the main conference room, the blinds were half closed. Through the slats, Martinez saw someone he didn't recognize. A tall man in a slate gray suit, standing at the whiteboard. Next to him, the precinct commander. Quiet, listening. The door was closed. There was no schedule for that meeting. No briefing. By noon, word spread. Personnel files were being pulled. Internal reviews reopened. No formal accusations, just scrutiny. Someone had asked for access logs, old body cam footage, communications transcripts, everything that wasn't supposed to matter anymore. That afternoon, Sergeant Bell, 19 years in the department, cleared out his desk. He didn't say goodbye, didn't make eye contact, just left. Someone said he'd been placed on administrative leave. Someone else said he requested it. No one knew for sure. At the courthouse, the judge from the old man's hearing was absent. Not out sick. Not on vacation. Just not scheduled. Another name appeared on the docket in their place, a name Martinez didn't recognize. He checked the judicial calendar twice. The old one was gone. In the locker room, Martinez found an envelope taped inside his door. No sender, just his badge number on the front. Inside, a notice of temporary reassignment, effective immediately. No active patrol or enforcement responsibilities until further notice. Non-disciplinary. The words rang hollow. If it wasn't punishment, then what was it? He brought it to the lieutenant, knocked on the door. The response came muffled. Not now. He stood there anyway. After 2 full minutes, the door opened halfway. A voice clipped said, "You are to comply with reassignment. That's all." Then it closed again. He sat in his car for almost an hour, not driving, not thinking, just sitting. The streets outside moved like they always did. People crossing, kids laughing, sirens in the distance. But Martinez no longer felt part of it. That night, he called 3 different colleagues. No one answered. One texted back, "Give it time." But time wasn't the issue. It was presence, and his had been quietly erased. Not by force, not by scandal, but by something larger than he could name. He went home and opened his laptop, typed the name of the man he'd arrested. He tried before. This time, the browser froze. Then the screen went black. When it came back, the tab had closed. Just a message at the top. Access restricted. He stared at it, hands on the keyboard, heart suddenly very, very still. Because now it wasn't just silence. It was containment. The next morning, the SUV was gone. But everything else, the quiet, the space, the exclusion remained. And Martinez began to understand. This wasn't something he could undo. There would be no meeting, no reprimand, no explanation, just a new reality. And he would no longer be in the center of it. The precinct didn't feel different at first. The lights still buzzed overhead. The morning coffee still tasted burnt. The bulletin board still displayed smiling faces, commendations, birthdays, retirement notices. But Martinez no longer saw himself in any of it. He arrived at 7 a.m., even though his new role didn't require it. He sat at the back of the room during briefings. No one asked him to. No one told him not to. They just moved around him, as if the air had learned to bend where he stood. In the cafeteria, he sat at his usual table. No one joined. Not out of protest. Just routine, newly rewritten. Conversations continued nearby, low, professional, forgettable. He tried to join one once. A joke. A reference to a case from 2 months ago. The officer across from him didn't even look up. Just gathered their tray and walked away. He stopped bringing his badge to work. No one noticed. One afternoon, he passed the courtroom building, the one where it had happened, where the man had made the call. He paused at the steps, stared up at the dull concrete facade, then walked inside. The clerk's desk had changed. New staff, new rotation. He asked casually, "Is Judge Meyer in today?" The clerk blinked. "We don't have anyone by that name." He nodded, didn't argue, walked down the hallway. Courtroom 2B. Locked. No schedule on the door. No lights inside. Just rows of empty chairs behind glass. He stood there longer than he meant to. Back at the station, an internal message had been posted. No subject. Just a quote. "Power doesn't disappear. It relocates." No one commented. No one replied. But everyone read it. That night, Martinez stood in front of his bathroom mirror, removed the shirt with the department patch, folded it slowly. He placed it in the back of his closet. Not with reverence, not with resentment, just with finality. He no longer needed to perform the part. The part had moved on without him. Outside, the city breathed as usual, but he heard the quiet differently now. He recognized it, not as absence, but as replacement. Power had left the room, and it hadn't come back. The hallway was white long and humming with hidden systems, vented ceilings, sealed corners, doors with no handles. Somewhere in Virginia, no signage outside, no emblem, just glass and stone and silence. Inside, a man walked. No badge, No escort. No hesitation. At the end of the hallway was a single desk. No nameplate. A young man stood behind it. Uniform crisp, posture perfect. He looked up when the older man approached. Didn't ask for ID. Didn't speak. Just stepped aside. The old man reached into his coat, pulled out a card. Black, worn smooth at the edges. He placed it on the desk. The young officer stared, then gently picked it up with 2 fingers. A small drawer slid open beside him, silent, precise. Inside, others like it. 5, maybe 6. He placed the card inside, closed the drawer, clicked it shut. No logging, no scan, no confirmation required. Just return. The old man turned to leave. No handshake, no nod, no farewell. He walked back down the hallway, each step the same as the last, even, quiet, certain. When the door sealed behind him, the young officer leaned slightly toward the older one behind him, whispered, not quite believing his own words. Who was that? The older officer didn't look up, didn't change expression, just replied, he never left. Outside, the wind moved through bare trees. A crow shifted on a wire, and the building swallowed the last trace of light behind mirrored glass.